What is an insomniac, and should you be even using the title of being an insomniac when you struggled with long-term insomnia and sleep problems? So in today's video, we're very much going to look at, first of all, the description of what being an insomniac means and what I actually suggest in my client work in terms of even using or deciding not to use this label of defining yourself and your sleep struggles. And we're going to look at it from a very practical perspective. In my practice, I help clients to overcome long-term insomnia and sleep problems. And this definition of being an insomniac very much becomes part of that work that we need to put in place to be able to really help a person overcome their sleep problems and develop sleep skills for life that will really help them to be able to sleep no matter what happens consistently. Now, before we start looking at these different things, first of all, I wanted to welcome you back if you're part of my community already. If you're new, then let me just quickly introduce myself. So my name is Beatrix Schmidt. I'm a sleep coach, a professional speaker, and the creator of the Sleep Skills for Life program, which is very much my way of working with people like you who have struggled with longer term insomnia and sleep problems and want to learn how to really overcome them for life. So we really look at this practical element of developing sleep skills that will help you to sleep really well at night no matter what. Now, if you haven't yet, subscribe button below, hit that little bell as well so that I can let you know when I post new videos. And if you obviously watch this video and like the content, hit that like button below as well later on. Now that we covered that, let's really start talking about what this definition of being an insomniac is. And a word of warning, I am going to focus on what I do in my practice. Obviously, every different person and practitioner might be doing something different. There's a couple of different descriptions of either good quality sleep or insomnia around. So we're really going to look at what I use in my practice and whether or not it's applicable to you or not. But the first thing to bear in mind is sleep sits on a scale, which is where, again, a lot of people often jump into conclusions and self-diagnose when they don't fit certain criteria. And the other thing that also happens that I see regularly in my practice is misdiagnosing. There are 64 different types of sleep disorders. Part of that is also insomnia. So one of the groups is an insomnia group. But not every sleep disorder is going to be something that leads back to the body not working 100% physically. So there are certain sleep disorders that need physical treatment, medical treatment. There are others that are treatable, preventable, and obviously you can therefore overcome them as well from more of the practical or behavioral route. And this is why it's important not to jump into self-diagnosis, because if you miss out some of the things that you might not already be aware of or knowledgeable about, then you might be going down the inappropriate route to even attempt to overcome it. So when it comes to insomnia and the way I look at it, there are two different parts. One is short-term insomnia and one is long-term insomnia. Both of the definitions are pretty similar. It just depends on how long the sleep problem have been around. So let's start with short-term insomnia. Short-term insomnia, and how I approach it and I define it, is within a first 2-week period of time. So it's not a one-off, it's not a couple of days, it's literally a 2-week period where you have got an increase of sleep problems in some way. And let's define what that way is. This would be taking longer than half an hour to be able to fall asleep initially when you climb into bed, one nighttime waking, or being awake for longer than half an hour in the middle of the night. So whether or not that's one nighttime waking or more than one nighttime waking, we also look at how much time you spend being awake in the middle of your night, which shows us whether or not you're able to have restful sleep. Then if you do wake up in the middle of the night, are you able to fall back to sleep within the half an hour, or I actually look at within the 20-minute mark. Again, it shows your ability to be able to transition back into sleep and continue sleeping even if maybe you were disturbed. Then obviously we want to make sure that when you wake up in the morning, you're not actually tired or exhausted. So another part of really looking at whether or not you meet the requirements or definition of insomnia is how restful, recharging is the sleep that you get. Often when you might be having X amount of sleep, but you're waking a couple of times or you have different struggles, then what happens is in the morning you also feel tired, exhaustion, and so on. And these issues need to be around for 3 out of 7 days. This is where it comes back to the frequency of the issues. If it's a one-off, then it's not really appropriate for you to use this definition of being an insomniac or struggling with insomnia, because the problems aren't frequent enough. One-off not so good night sleeps are completely normal part of us as a human being. There can be various different reasons why you might not be able to sleep well as a one-off. So that's very different to actually really looking at this definition of insomnia. Then we've got long-term insomnia, which are the same things, but the only difference is that it's been around for longer than 3 months. Now you might be asking me, well, what happens in the middle? In my practice, I really look at anything after sort of the 2-week period, but often what happens is when your life settles back in, your sleep tends to get back to normal. So when it reaches this 3-month point where you consistently struggle 3 out of 7 nights for whatever parts of the sleep that I mentioned earlier, this is when you're already starting to act differently. You would have already started researching, trying things, and so on. So that's really the 2 different parts of insomnia and how we approach it, or how I approach it within my practice. So now that we covered that, we really come to this definition of being an insomniac. Now, if you fit into the criteria of struggling with sleep problems or insomnia that I mentioned earlier, that's what really would lead us to this definition of being an insomniac. And I would not recommend you using it in any shape or form below the 3-month mark, because quite simply sleep can change. It can change for various reasons, like I mentioned, and your sleep can return to normal. But after the 3-month period is often when people start using this definition of being an insomniac to define their sleep struggles. Now, one of the reasons I actually ask my clients not to use this very strict definition of being an insomniac is because it starts actually integrating into what I would call your identity. So when you struggle with sleep problems, obviously you start gaining that memory bank of the struggles that you experience, whether or not it's problems falling asleep or waking up in the middle of the night, or tossing and turning in the middle of the night, or even waking up exhausted or tired. That's a natural part of the process. So you start really integrating some of those experiences, memories, and you start acting differently. This is where you might start looking at tips and advice and integrating them into your life. So when it comes to this very strict definition of being an insomniac after about the 3-month period of time, what I've seen with a lot of the clients that I worked with is actually it creates a part of our belief where actually we surrender to this idea that we might not be able to sleep well again, or it might be extremely hard to overcome it, or that you're different to other people and therefore any of the things that might be out there will never work for you. So these are just some of the things that I come across over the years. You're probably going to have your own dynamics when it comes to this sort of very strict definition of sleep problems and an insomniac definition. So because of these beliefs that we build over a period of time, which are mostly based on memory bank and experiences, what it can cause is actually almost giving up. And I've seen this with a lot of clients who they might not have given up. They have still hope that something is going to work for them, but they move further and further away from practical skill set building, practical tools and techniques, and often they tried and experimented very quickly with very superficial things, often buying something like materialistic things. And this is one of the reasons why I don't use it in my practice, because whilst it is true that there is a definition of being an insomniac, it doesn't actually help you. It doesn't help you to embrace this idea of overcoming sleep problems with an open mind, with this real understanding that sleep is practical. You know, how we can build those sleep skills are going to help us to really be able to practically know how sleep happens and how we can make it happen. Now, if you define yourself as an insomniac and you feel like you might be, for example, stuck with it for life, or you will never be able to overcome it, then you're not even going to open up to looking at the appropriate advice for the issues that you are currently experiencing. So this is one of the main reasons why I personally don't use this definition of being an insomniac. I used to use it too when I was struggling with insomnia, but I learned the power of not using it, as you might also experience or have experienced, because it opens you up to searching for practical solutions. When you stop using that very strict title, it will start really shifting you towards more practical things. And this is what I experienced in my life as well. Now, obviously, depending on who you ask, there'll be different views on it. I definitely look at this as a practical work that is more on the beliefs and mindsets. If you believe you're an insomniac and potentially you believe that something is wrong with you or broken or something has gone wrong physically, then it's really not going to give you the opportunity to look for more appropriate practical advice. And I've seen this all the time in my practice. So I hope that this video has helped you to clarify what being an insomniac is, first of all, and why I actually recommend not really using it. Now, obviously, you might have different questions about it. So if there is anything else that perhaps you want to ask about in terms of this definition of insomnia, feel free to get in touch. And we can really look at how it's impacting you, how whether or not you calling yourself an insomniac is impacting you, how calling yourself somebody who struggles with insomnia is impacting you, and how you can actually really move forward, truly overcoming these issues that have been around for a long period of time. Now, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button below, hit that little bell so I can let you know when I post new videos. And obviously, hit that like button below as well if you have liked what I share with you today. This is very much the practical perspective and work that I do with clients. Just because there is a definition available, it doesn't mean that it's actually going to be helpful for us to really use it. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.